Good day, it's Dr. J, and I'm glad to be back with you for the latest installment in our Good Women in God's Word study. I hope that you have acquired, downloaded the outline that we will be following today, and you can get that as always from our church website. I brought something to show you today. It's more important than what room we're meeting in, and this is a collection of miniature flags that I keep in my office, and each flag is a country in the world that I've had the privilege to be in. I've got 30 so far, and God willing, I hope to be able to add to it. And I thought that would be kind of a good background prop for us in this study, because it's really a time when Jesus experiences a little international ministry. He goes outside of his home country and serves in the place of ministry with a lady that we call the Canaanite woman, sometimes called the Syrophoenician woman. It's easier to say Canaanite woman, isn't it? On the top of your outline, I simply ask a question, and that is, how do you answer when someone asks you, where are you from? When I think of that, I think of the circumstances of this. If I'm here in Bradley County, where I've lived for going on 35 years, I say, where are you from? I'll say, well, I'm from Knoxville. I was born and raised there, and that's where my earliest years were. But if I'm somewhere else, not in Bradley County, I say, where are you from? I'm from Cleveland, Tennessee. That's where I am. And so we make those distinctions. For those of you who've born and raised and still live in Bradley County, it's an easier answer for you, isn't it? But this is a story that is contained in two of the Gospels, in Matthew and in Mark, and how they identify the lady is interesting. We're going to look at Matthew's Gospel, which says where she's living now. Where are you from? Where she's living now there in Canaan, calls her the Canaanite woman. In Mark's Gospel, it tells where she's from. She is Greek born. She is Greek in her background. And so not only where she's from, but also where her family lineage is from. She's not technically Middle Eastern. She is, bloodline goes back to her Greek roots there. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Let's start with a setting, as we will help us understand the story if we know the setting that we're in. And we're picking up on verse 21 of Matthew's Gospel, where he says, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Now, Tyre and Sidon are along the Mediterranean coast. I've got a map on the back page of the notes. Tyre and Sidon along the Mediterranean coast here in what is modern day, and it's even labeled for you, modern day Lebanon, south of Beirut, if you know any of the modern geography of Lebanon there. And so Jesus is in this area. Now, if you want to gain some really big pastor points, you'll know the answer to this question. What other woman have we studied from this area? This is our 16th lady, but one other lived in this area. In fact, I saw it mapped out one time, right between Sidon and Tyre. Who was it? You can dig it out and look, pause for a moment. But it was one of the Old Testament ladies, a lady that we don't know her name. We just call her the widow of Zarephath. And Elijah, called by God, went to there, and he took the last little bits of food she had as she made him a little cake, and he ate it, and then God provided abundant supply to survive all the times of the drought and famine that were taking place in that story. So we visited her some weeks back, and it's the same region there. Now it tells us in that opening phrase of Jesus and the disciples leaving that place. And my question, where is that place? Where were they before they went here to the region of Tyre and Sidon? And you really have to go back to chapter 14 of Matthew's Gospel that closes on the story of Jesus walking on the water. Where did that take place? On the Sea of Galilee, of course, and that's that little circle right there. So this journey that goes from here and goes north and west into that place. And geographically, I get to come up with another question about distance. And so here it is. How far is it from Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, to Tyre? And the distance is 39 miles as the crow flies. And probably the most direct hiking trail that they would take to get there as they walked. It was interesting. I pulled this up on Google Maps, and it shows me today how you would get from Galilee over to the city of Tyre, and it's a lot longer route because you got to go south and catch a highway and go north and over to Beirut and then back south again. That was just an interesting thing, that the actual bird, as the crow flies distance is much shorter than the modern roads would take you on today. This is just an interesting point to say this is probably the most northern place that Jesus ever journeyed. At least from what we know in the Bible. We know when he was a little boy, they went to Egypt, Mary, Joseph, and the very young child Jesus. That's probably the southernmost place he ever journeyed. This, as far as we know, the most northern place. And again, he is out of the borders of Israel and out of what we might call Hebrew territory. Again, it's the international flair that's taking place. I want you to circle, before we move on, where it says Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Why do we withdraw from places? We withdraw because we need a break. We need some rest. We need some rejuvenation. And so that's part of why I think we take vacation somewhere else. We go to the beach. We go to the mountains. We travel someplace. Let's get away from all the reminders of the daily grind and pressures, and we can relax in a better setting than we might know otherwise. And I think Jesus certainly entitled to some times of retreat and renewal. Maybe he needed, these are along the Mediterranean Sea coast, a little beach time. People understand a little beach therapy. I don't know if he got to the beach or not, but it's close by. So just that even Jesus needed some downtime. And so he's looking forward to it. And maybe that's why he's going out of the country. The Hebrew people were looking earnestly, and his reputation was maybe he's the promised Messiah. Let's go find him. Let's put demands upon him. And just to get to a place where they're not quite as religiously wired would give him a chance to have some rest before he came back to do more of his earthly ministry. But while he's here withdrawn, we have what I'll call the encounter that he has with this woman we're studying this week. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Now, there's a lot we don't know about this woman. It just gives us a bit of just a brief picture of who she is. What do we not know? We don't know her name. The widow of Zarephath from the same area, we don't know her name. Most of the ladies we've studied, we get to associate a name. I wish I knew her name. Jesus, at the end of the story, thinks real highly of her. Her name would be one that we would embrace and hold dear, but it just doesn't tell her name. I kind of wish, again, that it did. You'd nice to get name recognition. It'd be nice to get your name in the Bible. Some years ago, I wrote some Sunday school material for Lifeway. I was real proud that they asked, and I thought I did a okay job at it. And one of the proud points was this was going to be in some Lifeway Sunday school material that was going to be in literally thousands of churches and thousands of Sunday school classes. And when they sent me a complimentary copy of it, which I appreciate, I started looking through it, and my name wasn't anywhere in there. They had left out the author, the writer's name. I actually got an apology letter from Lifeway because my name had been omitted. Boy, what a downer, not get your name. So she doesn't have a name. We don't know her name. We do not know her daughter's exact ailment. It says she was demon-possessed. There is a lot of different manifestations of how demons showed themselves in people, in possession situations. So we don't know exactly what that was like. I asked a question there and would never resolve this one totally. Did the Bible call demon possession what we think today as something else that was something qualified? Certainly there is evil, and evil brings illness in whatever ways that it may be, spiritual illness, physical illness, emotional illness that takes place. There is an unnamed man in the Gospels who asked Jesus to heal his son, and the description he gives of his son is a bit like a young man with epilepsy. And some have thought maybe that was what they were calling demon possession. I don't know. We know more today about wellness than people knew then, but we can look at a few things that I think are interesting. We could dig in deeper to the dynamic of demon possession, but this is a unique story, gives us a chance to at least reflect upon it here. Let me tell you a couple of things. Note this down. Demons are only mentioned twice in the Old Testament. And you see the references there from Deuteronomy and Psalms, and yet over 70 times in the New Testament. The Old Testament twice, the New Testament 70 times, and all but a few of these are in the Gospels, associated with the ministry of Jesus. I'll give you a couple of things that I think help me understand this. For example, perhaps Jesus' ministry to the sick exposed demonic activity as never before, that he saw it for what it was, and it was just kind of brought out a little bit more and exposed, and so that was one of the things kind of related to this too. Perhaps Jesus' incarnation, God, human flesh, salvation of the world on the line. You wouldn't expect Satan to take that laying down. He's going to oppose that, pull out his full arsenal, his demonic army, if you would. And so maybe the incarnation, the words there are stirred up a strong reaction in the demonic world. But I do think it's interesting here. During the Gospels, there is this intense time we find of demonic activity, not so much before, not so much after, associated with the earthly ministry of Jesus. So, again, more we don't know than we feel like we do know, but we do know a few things. I want to talk about this later. We do know she had disadvantages, and I'll list you three. She was disadvantaged because she was a woman, and it was just a male-dominated society in biblical days, and so that's one thing. She was a Gentile, coming to Jesus for help, wasn't kind of from his grander family, and so maybe discarded. We'll see at least the attitude of that is there. And she has a demon-possessed daughter, and so people would probably stay away from being something to help. None of this would help her appeal. But the thing we know most, and I'll talk mostly about today, and we feature in this lady, is she was persistent. She persisted in asking Jesus for help. She wouldn't take no for an answer. She continuously inquired and begged and pleaded for him for help. I call that by the title of the title of the study there, the Canaanite Woman, persistence on the behalf of her daughter. I think that's part of why she was so persistent. I mean, I'll fight for me, but I'll really fight for my kids. We will go further for somebody we love than we often might do ourselves. So this daughter, who like her mother, is unnamed and unseen in the story, we understand that she was not unloved. She was very much loved to have this mom who was advocating for her. And so we're going to talk about some ways that she continually showed greater persistence. First, persistent enough to seek out Jesus. It just tells us again, the Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him. Jesus is in the area. You know, there are stories of Jesus healing where he just happens to cross by somebody and near somebody. They're just there, and oh, Jesus is coming by. The man healed at the pool of Bethesda, who had been there for years and years and years, and and take up your mat and walk. It was the story of blind Bartimaeus, who found Jesus was walking by in Jericho, and Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. He persistently called out. But here is a lady, Jesus in the area, and I'm going to find him out. It wasn't somebody in a problem, in a trouble saying just, I wish an answer would come to me. I will wait for it and see what happens. I think faith is oftentimes waiting, but faith is also when you have opportunity to show initiative and get up and go like she did. She got up and go. She sought out Jesus, a word we use more in the last generation about some folks is they're seekers. They've got some questions. There's something in their life that are seeking after God. And here's a lady genuinely was seeking after Jesus. So she was present enough to seek him out, persistent enough. She was persistent enough to shout and to keep on shouting. She's crying, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. You get the idea they're both suffering pretty bad, both the daughter and the mother. Jesus did not answer a word. And let's just pause there for a moment. And I ask the question, why do you suppose that Jesus at first ignored the woman? Doesn't acknowledge her, doesn't answer to her. It kind of goes against what we would think, that this compassionate Savior we have, and here's somebody who's calling out for mercy, and he's full of mercy. Surely he would respond to that, but he doesn't say a word. And I'm going to offer a few thoughts of why that perhaps could be. One was he was trying to get away to rest. He was there withdrawn. Remember, he withdrew to this area, and he's trying to get away for some rest. When we go on vacation, we don't want somebody call us and say, oh, I've got some work I need you to do. And you say, I'm on vacation. I'm trying to get away from work. And so he needed that renewal time. He needed that rest time. And that was something he was trying to preserve. Related to that, the second, he didn't want to be recognized. You start a healing here, miracle there. Now suddenly vacation's not vacation anymore. There's a lot of people who have responded to come and put the pressure upon him. Or perhaps he was testing the lady. Let's see is how genuine her request is, how persistent that she is. A lot of times we pray for something and it doesn't happen the first time we pray for it. We're called upon to be persistent in our prayer. Jesus told a parable of even a judge who wasn't even religious, but a widow comes knocking at his door demanding justice, and she won't go away. And so, just because she persists, he goes and helps get the justice that she needs. So here maybe, just seeing if she's going to be persistent. Sometimes the Lord may say, we're not ready yet for the answer he wants to give, and so our faith has to grow. Maybe the circumstances aren't ready yet that take place yet as well. So I don't know of all the answer to that one, why Jesus would kind of ignore her, but we have what could be some very valid reasons. I ask a very interesting question here. It kind of steps on my toes, maybe yours too, as you try to put yourself in Jesus' shoes. He's kind of got his agenda set and what he wants to do, and he gets interrupted. So I ask, how do we respond when a person who is emotionally needy continually interrupts your conversation, generally wanting more than you wish to give? And we've all been there. We've all been there when somebody wants more of our time, more of our ear, more of our counsel than we really are in a place that we want to give. And I have to confess, at times my attitude is, I just wish you'd go away. I wish you'd just get a break. Maybe Jesus felt that at least to some degree here, because again, he was wanting his rest and his renewal. And while he doesn't say anything to her, eventually, isn't it the disciples who say something to Jesus about her? Send her away, for she keeps, there's that persistence, she keeps crying out after us. And that asking Jesus and to keep on asking Jesus, we find here in her persistence there. The next characteristic of her persistence is she's persistent enough to overcome Jesus' initial hesitancy. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Now, I have a very genuine question here, and I don't know the answer. Maybe you could help me here, because my question is, answered who? Who does Jesus say, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel? Does he say it to the woman? The disciples say, quieten her down, tell her to go away. And say, hey, lady, I'm only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. Go home. Or does he say it to the disciples? Because they're the ones that just spoke to him. Did he say to them, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel? Which is more of an attitude than I think a reality. Because we know that Jesus came to save all humankind, not just the lost sheep of Israel. And maybe here he is echoing the kind of attitude the disciples might have had. You're right, we got to take care of our own. Lost sheep of Israel, that's who we're to minister to. That's why we came all the way up here, so we could have a break from the people we're called to minister to. You tell them, Jesus. We have a bit of a myth that's debunked in this, a theological myth that's debunked in this story. And that is there's a scarcity. There's only so much So it's all got to go to the lost sheep of Israel, and there's not going to be enough for anybody else. Now, you got to take care of your own first. I understand that we have that feeling of responsibility and maybe privilege, take care of our own. But doesn't mean that we don't have a compassion for those who are outside the family. I like what Paul wrote to the church at Corinth. He's encouraging them in generosity, and lest they think, I can't be generous. He just says there's a spiritual dynamic that takes place when we show that generosity there. And I like the wording in the New Living Bible. And God will generously provide all you need. You will always have enough you need and plenty left over to share with others. So when we get that, there's only so much in God's kingdom work. How much abundant supplies of the things we really need will he take care of? What happens to this woman then? How does she respond when something that seems like we don't have any space for you, we don't have any grace for you, we don't have any ministry to you, we're for the lost people of Israel, and she's a Gentile? What does she respond? Okay, then I'll go away. No! She kind of doubles down. She gets more intense there. The woman came and knelt before him. We can imagine at first she's kind of shouting from a distance, Jesus, son of David. And maybe the disciples or her friends who were there are kind of keeping her back. You know, don't bother the master, don't trouble him. And while she's shouting, and at some point she breaks through and she falls and kneels before him at his feet. Lord, help me, she said. And even this quotation, I'll put it that way, I came for the lost sheep of Israel, doesn't deter her. Even that might give some reason to be hesitant. That brings us to our next section, where we see the other example of her persistence is she's persistent enough to give a very clever answer. This is the part of the story that makes her memorable to us and makes the story memorable to us. He replied, and he replies to her. He said, Lord, help me. So he replies, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Now, I want you to note here and ask you the question. We'll pause there. Why did Jesus seem to call her a dog? That doesn't sound like a polite thing to say. And I want to make sure I go on record telling folks, don't call people dogs. Don't refer to people as dogs. I'll give a few reasons here that perhaps this was the wording that Jesus chose. But as a grand general rule, let's not do that. First is the term dog was a slang word the Hebrews used to refer to Gentiles. And we can have some things like that if you're away somewhere and you say, I'm from Tennessee, and they say, oh, you're a hillbilly, or you're Yankee, or all kinds of things that are associated with where we're from. And we don't always take that personally. It's just kind of something lighthearted. I wish here I had known how Jesus looked when he said it. Or, how he had sounded, the inflection in his voice could have told us a lot. Maybe he's just being kind of lighthearted in this moment with them. So that could be part of it. Second, was he testing her? You could put this in the form of a question. The old Greek copies of the Gospels don't have punctuation, so you could say there, is it not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs? It's a question more than it's a statement. What's she going to say about that? Frankly, this was kind of the attitude of the disciples. You don't do that. We're the children. We keep the food, and the dogs have to fend for themselves. So maybe that was it. But we know from the New Testament that we are sent to teach all nations, that Jesus died for all humanity. God so loved the world. Paul writes to the church at Rome, which was about half Jewish background Christians and half Gentile background Christians. Really the signature verse, the purpose of his writing, that I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. And so we know salvation came. The Hebrew people had great advantage from their lineage, from their history, from their calling. But Jesus' sacrifice, his love, his grace was sufficient for all. And so maybe it was to see, is she got this kind of exclusive attitude, or is he, kind of saying a statement like the disciples might have believed at that time? And that brings me to the third. Was he taking advantage of a teaching opportunity to the disciples? That's the way they think. Oh, if they think my mercy and my grace and my message and my healing and my powers are only for the Hebrews, only for the children, well, here's a teaching opportunity to show them. A little bit of a detail that can be helpful is that the word dog there is really, it's like a family dog or a pet. In my childhood, there were neighborhood dogs that kind of wandered around, before there were leash laws or had to keep your animals in fences. But even in this ancient world, there were wild dogs, vicious, ferocious, rabid dogs, and those are not what he's talking about. He's talking about family pets here. I read maybe like a little dog that you would keep on your lap here, a pet dog, an endeared dog. Some people have pets that they are very endeared to and treat them exceptionally well. And so he says, do you take the food and you give it to the children or you give it to the dogs? And, she answers back in this clever response. Yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. If you've had a dog, maybe this has been something. Do you feed them dog food like you're supposed to? Or does sometimes your dog get scraps? Loves those scraps off the table, scrape the plates. And even the dog, you got enough food that even the dogs get a little something. I paraphrase, I think, what her attitude is like this, and you can see it on your outline. It's like she's saying, Lord, I know your blessings are for the entire world, but I believe your blessings are so great, I'll gladly take the leftovers. What a powerful thing. Just the leftovers will be enough. I preached a sermon on this story one time. I talked, just the crumbs. The Lord just give me his crumbs. Wow. Wouldn't that be great? It's all powerful, mighty God. Just the crumbs. What a privilege that would be. What's one splinter of the cross worth? What's one drop of Jesus' blood worth? What's one spoonful of his sweat would be worth, spiritually? There's plenty, enough. I'll take the leftovers. I'll take the scraps. I'll take the crumbs if that's what is necessary. Jesus is impressed with her answer, and the persistence pays off. And here we have the response. Then Jesus said to her, Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. Bit of Bible trivia for you. You have great faith. That exact expression, great faith. How many people in the Gospels did Jesus affirm as having great faith? The answer is 2. 2. This lady and a centurion who came to Jesus and said, I have a sick servant at home. And Jesus says, I'll go with you. And he says, no, I understand authority. You just say the word and he'll be well. And Jesus said, man, you've got great faith there. So we have in both these times, and all these times, he's referring to Gentiles. Gentiles and healings where Jesus didn't have to be physically present is true too. And that's part of the element of the faith that they have. I'll also note that Matthew's gospel was written to Hebrew people. He laid out the ministry of Jesus in a way that he hoped would appeal to the Hebrew people who knew the prophets, and he could show where they were fulfilled in the life and ministry of Jesus. And so here he's telling the Hebrew people the power of God through Jesus is for the Hebrews, but not just the Hebrews. It is for the Gentiles also, and they have, the examples have great faith. You read through the Gospels, you find 5 times Jesus chides the disciples for having little faith. So 5 times the disciples have little faith. 2 Gentiles he singles out and says they have great faith. Well, we'll finish it up by just noting, we say of some people, he or she doesn't know the meaning of the word quit. And this is one of those ladies. She didn't seem to know the meaning of the word quit, persisted along with a request to Jesus. And it showed some genuineness about her and the strength of her love for her daughter and her trust in Jesus. That idea of continuing on, persisting on, reminded me of a saying Jesus gave us in the Sermon on the Mount. We sing it, we quote it. Ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Grammatically, all the verbs in that statement, all the verbs are in the present tense, ongoing current action all the time. So could be said, keep on asking, always be asking, and it will be given to you. Keep on seeking, and you will find. Keep on knocking, and the door will be open to you. She is an example of that kind of persistent attitude, isn't she? And persistence measures the genuineness of our faith. If you give up quickly, you try, well, I tried something. You say it once. You say a prayer once. You don't get the answer. It's easy to fake faith in the short run. You can sound right. You can use the right words. You can do, but those who will be persistent through obstacles and through those things that would tend to push you away, those persistence will show that your faith is genuine. I hope that we will show persistent faith. We bring our requests to Him. Now we season that, as we said last Sunday, always saying, not my will, but thine be done. But as we pray and we make our requests known, may we be characterized like this lady of one of persistence. Thank you for joining with me. We'll see you next time.